Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. The blasts of the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 represent, in my opinion, the 9/11 of Germany or the 9/11 of Europe as a whole, because, in my opinion, the repercussions of the Nord Stream blasts will last for probably a century, and the dynamics that governs Europe and its relationship with Russia will change drastically, and it is already changing because of this blast. And there were so many developments since the blast, or let's say even before the blast and during the blast and after the blast, so many stories, so many narratives, and so many allegations on this case. I want to go very quickly on the chronology and the timeline of the events. Just before the blasts, the United States objected the construction of the Nord Stream vocally, openly, and then Joe Biden said we will bring an end to it if Russia invades Ukraine. Victoria Nuland also she expressed similar opinion in this regard, and we know that since the blasts happened just right after these statements, they started to blame Russia at the beginning, that Russia actually blew up its own infrastructure because they said Russia wants to harm Europe on the energy level without taking into consideration the interests of Russia, which is for peaceful coexistence with Europe, for its own interests, its geopolitical interests, and also for its economic interests. And then when they blamed Russia, after that, it came a phase of silence. The attitude was like, let's forget about it, guys. Nothing happened here. So let's turn the page and we continue speaking about other issues. But then investigative journalist, notorious, I would say, investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh came, and he revealed the Biden administration and Biden himself, in like as a person, as a president, his role in blasting the Nord Stream pipelines by through his investigations and contacts in the administration, in the Pentagon and the CIA. The media somehow decided in the United States and in Europe to smear Seymour Hersh, calling him a blogger. But these stories and smear campaigns didn't stand for a long time because Hersh is too credible and with a very long track record in his reporting investigations, starting from Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and now Ukraine. And he has proven to be very, very credible. So these smear campaigns didn't work. And the CIA started after that planting false information in the media. And they started to say a pro-Ukrainian group conducted this operation, this terrorist attack on the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, but the story was too weak and so ridiculous that it didn't even stand again in among the experts and the journalists who were like, some people have some knowledge, right, about blastings, about explosives, about the TNTs, and about if a ship can carry such explosives or not. So Biden was in trouble because these stories couldn't stand up on 2 feet, and lots of people, they opened holes in these stories. And after that came lots of stories against Joe Biden himself. His son Hunter Biden laptop story turned out to be accurate, and his alleged ties with Ukraine turned out to be accurate. It turned out that he was doing business with Ukraine in energy companies, he himself and his son as well, and they have made millions of corrupted money in Ukraine. So we are now heading toward the new elections in the United States, right? So the reputation of the president of the United States is at stake, and he wants to run again. I don't know why, but that's a completely different story. But he's going to run for presidency, right? Again. So there is a consistent effort nowadays by the deep state in the United States. I'm talking about the military industrial complex. I'm talking about the CIA. I'm talking about the FBI. I'm talking about the companies and the very rich people in the United States. There is a consistent attempt nowadays to whitewash the reputation of Joe Biden before the election in 2024. So that's why now we have news story coming in the media. I think the first who reported is the Wall Street Journal, if I'm not mistaken. And now they say Ukraine actually conducted this terrorist attack on the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Something, in my opinion, is not so believable. And I will tell you later why at the end of this video. So stay tuned till the end of this video, guys, why I believe the United States conducted it, and not Ukraine. So now we know that the CIA is blaming Ukraine. And this is the article of the Wall Street Journal. They say US warned Ukraine not to attack Nord Stream. The CIA warned the Ukrainian government not to attack the Nord Stream gas pipelines last summer after it obtained detailed information about a Ukrainian plot to destroy a main energy connection between Russia and Europe, officials familiar with the exchange said. Weeks later, in August, the CIA informed at least 7 different NATO allies that Ukraine no longer appeared to be plotting to sabotage the pipelines and that the threat had diminished, European officials said. Those officials now believe Ukraine hadn't cancelled the original plan, but had modified it, selecting a new point of departure and tapping an alternative military officer to lead it. The message delivered by CIA officials to Ukraine in June followed a tip the CIA received from the military intelligence services of the Netherlands, these officials said. Weeks later, on September 26, the pipelines were hit. Ukraine has vehemently denied that it had anything to do with the attack on the pipelines. Initial intelligence suggested that the sabotage team was answering to General Valery Zaluzny, the commander of the armed forces, according to people familiar with it. The CIA then received information that Ukraine had called off the original plan, according to a US official. The following month, a series of powerful underwater explosions tore apart 3 of the 4 main Nord Stream pipelines. In a recent interview with the German newspaper Bild, Ukrainian President Zelensky said, "I believe that our military and our intelligence didn't do it, and when anyone claims the opposite, I would like them to show us the evidence." I think for the first time, probably I agree with Zelensky. At a meeting with a European counterpart in October, CIA Director William Burns told his counterpart that available evidence didn't point to Russia. When asked if it was Ukraine, he said, "I hope not," according to an official present at the meeting. Western officials, including in the US and Germany, have said they suspect a pro-Ukrainian group orchestrated and executed the sabotage. So this is the article, guys, and they are now even naming a general. His name is, it was here, yeah, Valery Zaluzny. Okay, I will just write it down here because we'll come back to that later. And it's crazy because the information that they say they have obtained is from the Netherlands intelligence agency. And now, okay. The Dutch intelligence agency warned the CIA about it, and the CIA told the Ukrainian side not to blow up the Nord Stream pipelines. This is the official story. However, if we go back a little bit to the role of the Netherlands in planting false information, and this is from 2018, it is written in 2018, but the information that includes this article speaks about a conversation or exchange that happened between the Dutch intelligence and the CIA. And without going further into details, this article is basically that the Dutch intelligence is alerting the United States about the Russian hack of Democratic Party. And they're talking about how the Russians penetrated US institutions, the State Department, the White House, the DNC, and they are trying to manipulate the elections in the United States, in order to bring Trump at the end of the day to power. And now in 2023, we know with concrete evidence that this has never happened, and the Russians didn't intervene in the elections, nor they have helped Trump to reach to power. This was a planted information. So now that we know that the Dutch intelligence has a track record in planting false information, and the United States as well. So this story is that the Dutch warned the CIA and the CIA told the Ukrainians not to do it. In my opinion, doesn't hold up, because first things first, the CIA doesn't ask or kindly ask the Ukrainian side not to do something. If they wanted the Ukrainians not to do such an operation, they would have ordered them, dictated them, forced them not to do it. But have the Ukrainians done this operation? I don't think so. I don't think that the Ukrainians have done. They have the capacity, the intelligence, and the technology to conduct such an operation. I think the parties who have such capabilities are the United States, the UK, probably Poland, and some other Baltic countries. But Ukraine is a very corrupted country. It's not sophisticated. It doesn't have the technology. If the Ukrainians or Ukrainian nationals committed such an attack, I would tend to believe that this was CIA designed. The architecture has been put by the CIA. The plan was put by the CIA. The equipment, the technology, the plan was everything was orchestrated by the United States and probably the UK, Poland, and other Baltic countries, and the perpetrators could be Ukrainians. This is the narrative that I would like to believe in if Ukrainians have done it. Otherwise, it's definitely the CIA, in my opinion, and as I told you, I will come for that later. But why is this shift of the narrative now? As I mentioned, because one, they want to whitewash the reputation of Joe Biden. But also, there is another thing, guys. The counteroffensive of Ukraine nowadays is not really going as planned. And this is a new article on the Washington Post on the 14th of June, so just yesterday. It says, as Ukraine's counteroffensive heats up, Washington holds its breath. As Ukraine launches its long-awaited counteroffensive against entrenched Russian occupiers, both Kyiv and its backers are hoping for a rapid retaking of strategically significant territory. Anything less will present the United States and its allies with uncomfortable questions they are not yet prepared to answer. Western officials claim not to know Ukraine's exact plans. Ideally, Pentagon officials have indicated the Ukrainians will use their newly supplied tanks and training to cut through Russia's land bridge between occupied eastern and southern Ukraine, or take control of the land and sea gateways to the Crimean Peninsula. Such gains would break the current narrative of a stalemate and quell any calls for reconsidering current policy. As he heads into next year's elections or the election campaign, Biden needs a major battlefield victory to show that his unqualified support for Ukraine has burnished U.S. global leadership, reinvigorated a strong foreign policy with bipartisan support, and demonstrated the prudent use of American military strength abroad. Meanwhile, even the measured pace of supply has severely depleted allies' arsenals. A problem, this is very important, guys, to just focus here. Meanwhile, even the measured pace of supply has severely depleted allied arsenals, a problem seen as particularly dangerous amid growing Chinese saber rattling and the possibility that Ukraine's counteroffensive will be less than decisive. Experts and Pentagon officials say support for the war has exposed defense manufacturing delays that are the product of long ingrained weapons development and acquisition practices, along with pandemic exacerbated supply line and workforce deficit. This is the most important paragraph, in my opinion. A modeled outcome of limited gains in Ukraine would provide grist for all of those critiques and further cloud the already murky waters of NATO and European Union debate over future posture towards both Ukraine and Russia. A less than, quote, overwhelming success would probably also increase pressure in the West to push Kyiv to negotiate a territorial settlement that may not be to its liking. Guys, so we have two, in my opinion now, problems or two reasons why the United States probably blaming Ukraine. One is the elections in the United States and the attempt to whitewash the crimes of Biden, who, in my opinion, committed this terrorist attack. And secondly, is the counteroffensive isn't really approaching and advancing the way the NATO countries want it to be. There was a big campaign here, guys, if you don't live in Germany, for example, that if the Leopards arrive in Ukraine, they will turn the tides upside down, and they have made a big issue out of it. Free the Leopards. There was a movement here every day in front of the Chancellery, or where the chancellor works, and all these so-called social justice warriors were there, and are probably drinking cafes and mochas in Starbucks, not caring about what's happening in Ukraine because they're just like zombies. and they just follow and continue what the media is telling them. And they really thought like a few tens, probably 80 to 90 tanks would change the tides in Ukraine when Russia has thousands of them. And the proximity of, if you see the geography, Russia is very close to Ukraine, right? And the manufacturers of Russia, if a tank is hit, for example, the spare parts, the repair factories, etc., are approximately close to Russia. If a Leopard tank is now hit, it's not fully destroyed, for example, where are they going to fix it? Where are they going to repair it? Are they going to now build factories in Ukraine to rebuild and repair these tanks? There are certain things that are really mind-boggling, in my opinion, the way they present things in a very easy way, as if it's a super machine that cannot be destroyed. And we've seen so many videos now from Ukraine that the Leopards and none other types of tanks are being destroyed and melted, just like any other material, right? The Russians, the Americans, and all these countries, when their enemies develop certain weapons and they have either intelligence information about this weaponry, so they develop the counter weapon so they can counter this type of weaponry, or if they capture one of these tanks, like I've seen a photo of a Leopard tank now that the Russians have captured. So they dismantle the technology and they understand the equipment and they develop a counter weapon to it. So it works that way. And also do not forget that the Russians have an experience with the Leopards in Syria. The Turkish army used the Leopards in Idlib and in northern Hama when the Syrian army and the Russian forces were trying to repel and expel Al-Qaeda terrorists. And the Turkish side used these tanks to fight against the Syrian army, and the Russians destroyed these tanks, so many of them. So they have experience in this type of warfare. So these are the two reasons, guys, why, in my opinion, now the United States is blaming Ukraine. And before I tell you why I believe the United States did it, I will play probably a short video. It's 3 minutes. I will just share it with you first. So this is on US-EU reluctance to blame Russia for destroying Kakhovka HPP. This is an ex-CIA Ray McGovern. He says, did Zelensky tell US he was going to do this? Or did US tell Zelensky to do this? Victoria Nuland, who is running this area, she may have told someone, go ahead and blow up that dam. So the former CIA officer, Ray McGovern, he believes that Zelensky, in cooperation with Victoria Nuland, they blew up or they hit the Kakhovka dam. So if we see these developments and we see what these officials believe in about these sensitive cases, we cannot really rule out the possibility, of course, that Ukraine did the Nord Stream pipeline blasts, but at the same time, believing that Ukrainians did alone without cooperation, coordination with the Americans, the CIA, and the MI6, and Poland, at least, it would be foolish to believe that Ukraine did it alone. So I just wanted to bring your attention to this. I'm not going to play the entire video now, that this cooperation exists between both sides all the time. And Ukrainians would not dare to go like too far and blow up a very critical infrastructure that belonged to Germany and to Russia without coordination with the United States. So why I believe the United States did it? I came across recently a brilliant article which was written before the Russian offensive and invasion of Ukraine. I know people will disagree with me on offensive or the term offensive or invasion. It's not the issue of the wordings right now, guys. It's the issue of why this has happened, and I have explained to you so many times the context. It was definitely provoked, and it's a Russian offensive on Ukraine. This is my opinion about it. The crisis in Ukraine is not about Ukraine, it's about Germany. This article is very brilliant, and it's a shame that it's not published in a big platform, but it is what it is, and it explains a lot. The Ukrainian crisis has nothing to do with Ukraine. It's about Germany, and in particular, a pipeline that connects Germany to Russia called Nord Stream 2. Washington sees the pipeline as a threat to its primacy in Europe and has tried to sabotage the project at every turn. Remember, guys, this article was written before the Russian offensive on Ukraine and before the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. The Americans do not want Germany to become more dependent on Russian gas because commerce builds trust, and trust leads to the expansion of trade. As relations grow warmer, more trade barriers are lifted, regulations are eased, travel and tourism increase, and a new security architecture evolve. Amazing. In a world where Germany and Russia are friends and trading partners, there is no need for US military bases, no need for expensive US made weapons and missile systems, and no need for NATO. And this is exactly what Brzezinski wrote and said about Ukraine and the Germany's Russian integration of economies. There is also no need for transact energy deals in US dollars or to stockpile US treasuries to balance accounts. Transactions between business partners can be conducted in their own currencies, which is bound to precipitate a sharp decline in the value of the dollar and a dramatic shift in economic power. This is why Biden administration opposes Nord Stream. It's not just a pipeline, it's a window into the future, a future in which Europe and Asia are drawn closer together into a massive free trade zone that increases their mutual power and prosperity while leaving the US on the outside looking in. Warmer relations between Germany and Russia signal an end to the unipolar world order the US has overseen for the last 75 years. A German-Russo alliance threatens to hasten the decline of the superpower that is presently inching closer to the abyss. This is why Washington is determined to do everything it can to sabotage Nord Stream and keep Germany within its orbit. It's a matter of survival. That's where Ukraine comes into the picture. Ukraine is Washington's weapon of choice for torpedoing Nord Stream and putting a wedge between Germany and Russia. The strategy is taken from page 1 of the US Foreign Policy Handbook under the rubric Divide and Rule. Washington needs to create the perception that Russia poses a security threat to Europe. That's the goal. In my opinion, in 1 minute reading of this article, we get everything we need to know about the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline and everything that misses in the mainstream media about the importance of the Nord Stream and how the Nord Stream would have created a strong relationship between Germany and Russia and eventually between Europe and Russia, and why strong trade relations can lead into political alliances and strategic shift in the balance of power in Europe and the security priorities, and why the Nord Stream pipelines could have also brought a new dynamic in Europe. That why would we need NATO? What's the purpose of NATO? The purpose of NATO was to counter the Soviet Union, right? And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's against Russia. But if Russia and the Europeans are getting along and they have established a strategic relationship between them based on trade, based on trust, and based on mutual benefits, then what's the need for NATO that is headed by the United States, right? So this is why, if you think about it rationally, if you think about it objectively, if you think about it from a geopolitical stance and point of view, you will see that the benefactor of the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline is the United States, is the United Kingdom. The parties that they are the most damaged from this in terms of the economy, in terms of future cooperation, are Germany and Russia. So definitely, I don't believe Germany did it. I don't believe Russia did it. And in this analysis, you understand who are the beneficiaries of such an attack. And accordingly, you decide who did it. If the Ukrainians did it, it definitely happened in coordination between the Ukrainians, the Brits, and the Americans. If the Ukrainians aren't involved in it, it's the United States and the UK, probably in cooperation with Poland and other Baltic countries. So what do you think, guys, of the CIA accusation that Ukraine did it? Do you think Ukraine did it? Do you think the Americans did it? Or do you think the Ukrainians did it in coordination with the CIA? Let me know your opinions in the comment below. I've been your host, Almassian of Syriana Analysis. If you're new, please subscribe, hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and educate the masses. And if you want to support my independent commentary work like this, you can become a patron. Link in the description below. And see you next time.